Welcome back. You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet. Canada's international student crackdown is now sparking protests, with thousands of students staging sit-ins over rejected work permit applications. And for Indian students, the stakes are huge. International students contributed $30.9 billion to Canada's economy, with Indian students accounting for around 40% of that contribution. But students say they are now being left with no clear path to work after investing lakhs in their education. Canada has tightened study permit rules, including a 90-day expiry period, new requirements for switching institutions, and changes to course eligibility for post-graduation work permits. Students say they met the financial requirements when they enrolled, but now risk losing legal status when their permits expire. Their demands are actually simple: review rejected applications, protect students already enrolled under earlier PGWP rules, and provide a fair pathway to work. The question is, after billions in fee, is Canada now shutting the door on its international students? And is this something which is even legal? Ambassador Bhaswati Mukherjee, former diplomat, is with us on the program. Shruti Das Gupta, foreign affairs expert, joins us on the show. Eric Lemkule, international affairs commentator, is also with us. And last but by no means the least, Mr. Pathakrit Pine, international affairs expert, joins us on the program as well. Ambassador Mukherjee, I'll begin with you. In fact, Canada is kind of following suit to what the Americans are also doing, and which can be summed up in a few words. They're making life difficult for Indian students in their educational institutions. What's the motivation here, and what's the outcome, ma'am?
Well, it's clear that Canada is going through certain economic difficulties, also because of their current problems with the United States, etc., but also for other reasons which they need to fix. But these students have been there already, and according to international law, new laws cannot apply retrospectively to those who are already there. If they came in there, they invested their money, many of them, their parents sold their land and their holdings to enable them to get this education in Canada. They have to be given a fair chance to be able to work for a couple of years so that they can earn enough to pay back the loans they took in India to come to Canada in the first place. If they want to restrict students, including Indian students, from coming into Canada, those laws can apply to future students. But legally, it cannot apply retrospectively. And since Canada is a country based on rule of law, I am convinced that if it's taken to the court, they should get some kind of at least a better hearing, a fairer hearing than in the US. But if they don't, they would be faced with a very difficult situation, because it would mean that their continued stay in Canada would become illegal. They would become illegal immigrants, in which case they would be faced with the difficult choice of having to move out of Canada or to live in the kind of shadowy existence that you have when you are an illegal immigrant whose status has suddenly gone from legal to illegal, which is very difficult. And finally, this is also a wake-up call to all of us here in India, Beneath, particularly to parents, to understand that there are certain countries that have become racist or xenophobic, or don't want Indian students anymore. They will understand when Indian students stop coming there, what a big blow it will be to their economy. That $30.9 billion, 40% of it is contributed by Indian students. We should encourage our students to go elsewhere, and we should really look to have an education system by which we can accommodate as many students, Indian students here as possible, and encourage them to diversify so that everybody does not need higher level tertiary education. They could go in for vocational, they could go in for other things, or they could move to more friendly destinations, Singapore, etc., and just stop focusing on Canada and US at the moment, since the atmosphere there seems to be rather unfriendly, to put it mildly, to our students. Vinny.
Pathikrit, if I ask you, what is the fallout here for Indian students? They have a valid point, don't they? That when the fee was taken, the enrollment happened, the dream and the vision that was sold to them, it was a different reality, and now it's a different situation. Isn't that unfair?
Were there written confirmations with legal validation that they would be assured of all kinds of post-graduation facilities and that probably they will be allowed to live for eternity and then next generations will be allowed to stay there and germinate? Is it something like that? Because I have studied in Singapore. I know it very clear that once your graduation is done or post-graduation or whatever you do, I did my MS in international relations. It was very clear that they just don't want people to work there. They want the citizens or the permanent residents to be there and work because there are challenges. Now imagine if in India, that today you see a large number of students from other countries come and study in many of the private universities. I mean, imagine if tomorrow every one of them say that they would have to be given the right to work here, to settle down here, to take care, that it is our responsibility to take care of them. Are we, would we agree to that? I know many Sri Lankan students, many Bangladeshis and many African students do study here. I understand there are concerns. I understand the plight of the students, and I have no love lost for Canada as a country. But I'm trying to be very realistic that when it comes to these countries, it is true that there is an obsession in India for spending huge amount of money, of fortune, by selling of ancestral properties to go and get a degree in Canada and presume that they can settle down there. That is our problem. I mean, Canada is allowing us to come because we are willing to go. And I do not believe, with all due respect, that today India doesn't have opportunities. You have more than 1,400 universities here in India. There are hundreds of thousands of colleges. Not everybody needs to get into the IITs. And I certainly don't think those people who are going to Canada are the best of the brightest of the students. I'm sure many of them are very good. But if you actually want to study, there is no scarcity of colleges in India because in my last understanding and count, I'm just talking about West Bengal, forget about the whole India scenario. There are thousands and thousands of seats in the engineering colleges which are vacant because there are not as many students to study there. So if somebody wants to get a degree in engineering or something else, there is no scarcity. But if there is this obsession that I have to go to the country of a Gora and I get a Gora degree, and then it is the Gora's responsibility to take me in because I want to project myself as an elite brown Sahib Gora, that is our problem. That's not Canada's problem. Canada has never given me some kind. We have not solemnly, taken a solemn oath that we have to go to Canada. I went to Singapore not because I have an obsession for a foreign degree. I went there because it was very cost effective. I got 90% scholarship. Had it been that I would have had to pay the whole amount, I would have not gone because I was never willing to sell off my ancestral property to take a loan to go for an expensive degree. Now, those who are going, and with all due respect to such students, we must support them. But this realization has to come. It has become a phenomena in states like Punjab where people are selling off their properties just to go to Canada. And what happens after that? Do you think Canada has that kind of an economic vibrancy today that they can employ every one of them? I don't think so. Because there are economic downturns happening. And anywhere you go, whether it is United Kingdom, whether it is Netherlands, whether it is Singapore, anywhere you go, the situation is the same, that they might sell you dreams. The universities, that's exactly what they do. But there is no guarantee you'll get a job because there is too much of resistance from the locals. During my stay in Singapore, the issue was this: there was an election coming, and anybody who was employing, especially students from India and China, the company would have to pay almost a similar amount to the government as some kind of a penalty or a tax if you employ them. So there are issues, and if we say that India first, then Canada can also say Canada first. I mean, to presume that just because you've studied there, you'll get a permanent resident status, to presume that then you'll get a citizenship. I mean, Canada has its own laws.
Okay, all right, fair enough. I see your point, Shruti. To each his own. But, for decades now, Canada being the country it is, Canada is not the United States, right? They need this money for their economy. They need this as an engine of growth as well. And they have relied not only on India, but the rest of the world as well to keep this engine going. And obviously, this is going to be some sort of a step down from the kind of economy that was being driven through these universities, all right? What do you have to say about it?
Well, let's look at the figures that from 2024, when the first revision of rules came, the input of Indian students dropped by 40%. Then it dropped furthermore 40 to 60%. And now furthermore, if I look at 2024 as the base year, we are down to 80% lesser number of students registering. Where we had 4.5 lakh students registering in 2024, we have 1.5 lakhs registering this year. So that should show you the kind of shrinking of the economy that is going to be happening in Canada itself. Not just the educational institutes, which depend on 70% of their revenue from foreign students because they pay a higher fees. So they depend on foreign students to come and keep these educational institutes afloat. Then beyond that, the housing system that is there, the delivery systems, the apps, people go there and do part-time jobs to keep afloat in their economic status. So that kind of a parallel economy is also going to struggle. So what they're going to run out of is cheap labor. They're going to run out of sources of income for landowners, for flat owners. So that market is going to come crashing down. The utilities market is going to come crashing down because the number of consumers is going to shrink. The educational institutes are already winding up. For the particular case that we're talking about, Portage, it had two other colleges affiliated with this. Those affiliated colleges have already shut down. They wound up their business. So the educational institutes are also shutting down. So this is not good news for Canada also, but they are also suffering under a deluge of migrants, and they need to counter it with the number of jobs which they don't have. That's why specified which areas they are willing to take foreign students who are studying there. They said agriculture, you're welcome, healthcare, you're welcome. So there are a few sectors where they still need, an influx of cheap labor, and they've identified that, and they only want to consider you for that. Beyond this, the conversation I'm going to lead from Empathy Ji went on. This particular college, the problem is that they had an on again and on off again policy. They were always out of the postgraduate work permit program, but sometimes by hoodwinking the system, their previous students rollouts were given the postgraduate work permits. So because of that, the 2024 class is not grandfathered in, because now they're putting the rules very firmly, fair and square as per their thing, and that is why these students are they were hoping that they would be beyond the rules, but they're not, because their college was never part of that program. It was never considered it, and so they unfortunately we have an information asymmetry happening. People, as earlier explained, want that big degrees, they want that big stamp on their resume. And because of it, they end up facing a situation where they were never sure of which university is actually offering them this particular degree, whether it actually is qualified for the programs that they want to use or exploit to stay in the nation and work and earn back the money from that nation where they've spent it. So there is a shrinking of the economy. There is going to be an impact on Canada. They are going to face it. There is no working around it. They cannot sugarcoat it. This is definitely going to appease a small section of Canadians who want to now tighten up the belts and ensure that migrant workers are listed as they are needed to be. They don't dilute their own identity, and they're pretty much welcome to do so, but at the cost of a large amount of losses, which is going to reflect in the years to come in Canadian economy itself.
Okay, let's get a word in from Eric as well. Eric, this is a situation which Canada is perhaps used to by now. Even a few years ago, there were signs that the job market in Canada was extremely saturated. There were no prospects. In fact, people who are already working in Canada, of whatever origin they might have been, including Indian, were coming back because of underemployment. Why are these changes being introduced today if this problem has lingered on for so long?
Well, there is a situation over the last, I think really the last decade or even 20 years, where particularly Indian students would come, as other commentators here have said, they're perhaps sold family property, but in any case, they're considered from the upper class of Indian society. Anyone that can afford the really expensive tuition fees for foreign students here is just assumed to be from wealthy background. So the college CEOs very cynically have welcomed these potentially immigrant students because they want to inflate their own budgets. So this has happened and got to the point where there were some bogus colleges even, and they lowered the quality of the education by welcoming thousands of students that came here. And unfortunately, there's cynicism on the Indian side because it's not just for an education. Most of the students that came here had every intention of trying to get a green card to stay or to get permanent residency, and then invite family members to increase their own personal immigration. So this kind of works around the normal immigration procedure. So the cynicism on both sides created a situation where, as you see today, there's a kind of coldness and a dismissive attitude towards students that are already here. I mean, most of them, I'm sure, are here for good reasons to get a good education, although I'm sure most of them also came here with the hope of getting permanent residency. So it's a kind of uneasy situation, and created a certain amount of, you could call it bigotry on the part of public opinion, but you could just say there's a cynicism about what this procedure is and where it's leading and how it is shaping Canadian immigration policy outside of government policy. So these problems have reached the point where, and then Trump comes back in with his ICE, and we don't have ICE, fortunately, but these raids on the students and looking for their immigration status at the demonstrations, that's clearly intimidation, and does not make Canada look good. So Canada really is not looking so good these days from this kind of welcoming and even-handed reputation that we had in the past. So it's an unpleasant situation. How to resolve this? Well, I agree that the students that are already here really should be given some kind of ability to earn some money before they go back. But I think it's wrong to encourage this kind of backdoor immigration. It's not, because it's for the wealthy of Indian. It's not for simple Indians or normal working class, which Canada needs that kind of normal immigration more than it needs more computer programmers and engineers, and I mean we produce a lot of those really enough on our own that it's not. I think the regular immigration process is really more equitable for Indians, and it's more useful for Canadians.
You're right, Rick. And Ambassador Mukherjee, where does this leave India? Do we need to have alternatives now? There are alternatives now. And of course, the best alternative would be to work on, the higher education system in India.
Well, first of all, I wanted to respectfully bring to the attention of our colleague, I presume from Canada, that the best and the brightest Indian students do not go to Canada. Those who are the best and the brightest are absorbed in the IITs, etc., or they go to Harvard, etc., etc. They do not go to Canada. Those who go to Canada are usually the mediocre students coming from lower middle class families whose parents sell their property and all their assets to send them to Canada. In case you don't know what Gora means, one of my co-panelists said, Gora is the word which Indians coined when we were under colonial rule to mean the white colonized, the Gora. Now there are some Indians, unfortunately that's the remnants of a colonial society, who believe that a Gora, a white man's university certificate, has greater value than, let's say, what Pratik got from Singapore, or what I got from Delhi University, and then joined the Indian Foreign Service. I have a perfectly nativist education. That's what I am. No Gora certificate at all, ever. But then I think I'm better than most Goras and Gora educated people. But then our Indian parents have to understand that. They have to look at people like me and say, hey, wait a minute. She's non-Gora educated, but she's better than most Gora educated people. That's the change, Zinit, we need to bring about in India. But coming back to Canada, the point here is that Canada wants cheap labor. They want Indians to drive their trucks for them. They want Indians to clean their toilets for them. They want Indians to do all the dirty work which they as Goras or white people don't want to do. Why should we allow it? Why should we, post-colonized India, on the way to Viksit Bharat, which again for our foreign colleague means developed India, why should we send our labor to go there to be subjected to racism and to have the kind of, I remember in England 30 years ago, they would say in that patronizing British accent, oh, these Indians, they are here to clean our toilets. They are here to clean our airports. We don't want that. We will not send Indians there for cheap labor. We are no longer cheap. We are good. We are an emerging economy. If Canada wants cheap labor, let them go elsewhere. Let them go to those cheap countries where they'll get their cheap labor who will never ever go back. It reminds me of the time when I was ambassador in Netherlands and my Dutch friends told me that they used to call the Turkish labor there guest workers, Moroccans guest workers, because they hoped that they would go back. Nobody's gone back. They're all in their hijab. They're all Dutch citizens and they look very peculiar in little Netherlands, which is an epitome of a developed European white society.
All right.
The Canadians are going to have lots
Fair
of
enough,
surprises coming to them. Thank you.
All right. All right. We've run out of time, but appreciate the perspective everybody brought into this important argument. We'll take a short break now. Be right back.